What's up, everyone? Welcome back to 20 Minutes with Multz. Another 3-episode week coming your way this week, starting with today. We're going to recap both league championship series and see how the Phillies took down the Padres 4-1, and how the Astros swept the Yankees 4-0. An ugly series for both losing teams. We'll talk about it all. Also, New York's football teams are at it again. The Giants taking down the Jaguars and the Jets taking down the Broncos. Winning, and more winning with New York's football teams. We'll talk about all that, plus some more headlines going around the NFL, and we'll preview a little bit of what's going on in the NBA with the Knicks and Nets back at it today. If you like what you see, please be sure to like and subscribe and comment down below any feedback you have. Looking forward to hearing it all. And without further ado, let's dive right in. For the Phillies, getting to the World Series was a really simple plan. Number one, keep raking like you did against the Cardinals and the Braves. And number two, keep getting great starts out of Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. And that's pretty much what happened to them in the NLCS. Bryce Harper led the way on offense, and he is doing exactly what he was paid to do for this team when they brought him in 4 years ago. Harper had 2 home runs in the NLCS, he had 3 multi-hit games, and he got at least 1 hit in every game of the series. In total for the playoffs, he is hitting .419 with an OPS over 1,300. Talk about face of the franchise. Talk about October star. Talk about everything you want in your best player. He did it, and now he's got to lead this offense for one more round against the Houston Astros. And they're getting some other offensive contributions. JT Realmuto's having a decent postseason. Rhys Hoskins is hitting for a lot of power, even though it's not for a high average. He's got 5 bombs this postseason. And then you look at Kyle Schwarber, and man, is it fun to watch him hit. It really is. He knows he's hit it out better and more quickly than anybody, I think. It's just him and Giancarlo Stanton are my 2 favorite home run celebrations, because as soon as they hit one and they know it, they kind of just freeze in the box and watch it, and they really enjoy it. Schwarber's only hitting .200 this postseason, but he is heating up. He was hitting under 100 early on in the NLDS. OPS is over 800, and yeah, the few home runs he hit in this series certainly helped that one out. And on the mound for Philadelphia, Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler leading the way. It was Wheeler in this series. Nola only pitched once, and he pitched pretty poorly. He gave up 6 runs in Game 2, but Wheeler, in 2 starts, gave up just 2 earned runs with 16 strikeouts in 13 innings. He did everything he had to do and helped get Philadelphia to the World Series. And for the Padres, well, their offense wasn't horrible in this postseason. It just wasn't good in this particular series, but I won't even attribute their downfall to that. I attribute their downfall to the complete collapse of their pitching staff in both areas, starting rotation and bullpen. Joe Musgrove was bad in this series. Yu Darvish was bad in this series. Mike Clevenger was horrible in this series, and I really mean horrible. He made his 1 start, and that was in Game 4. He did not make it out of the first inning. As a matter of fact, he didn't get an out. And the bullpen collapsed from there with Sean Manaea, Luis Garcia, and Steven Wilson all giving up runs from there. And then in Game 5, Robert Suarez was one of the most trusted relievers for Bob Melvin's bullpen, and he ended up blowing it because Melvin put him out there for 2 innings, and in the second inning of work, Bryce Harper took him deep to left, and that was that. The Padres put together an incredible playoff run. They really weren't supposed to get past the Mets or the Dodgers. They had the toughest road to a world championship of any team. A 100-plus win Mets team with their lethal starting rotation, and the Dodgers, who they went 5-14 against and who had 111 wins in the regular season. They got past them, but the Phillies are the hottest team in this postseason, and we see this so often. A hot team can beat a good team any day. And now the Phillies have a chance to complete the same script that a division rival completed back in 2019. The Nationals had a losing record in May. They stormed their way into the playoffs, got past the wild card game, got past the Dodgers, made it to the World Series, and now they're in the same position and they were in the position to take down the juggernaut Astros, and they did. They took them down in 7 games. Now the Phillies have a chance to do that again and hand the Astros yet another World Series upset. We'll talk about the World Series itself in a few minutes, but first, let's talk about the Astros and how they just destroyed the Yankees in this year's ALCS. All right, now it's time to get on to the toughest part of the video, talking about how the Houston Astros completely and utterly destroyed the New York Yankees in the ALCS 4-0. This was the Yankees' weakest effort put up against the Astros yet. And here's the crazy part. In the past, the Yankees have really struggled in Houston. They have just one win in ALCSs in Houston compared to 4 in New York. But in this series, their two greatest chances to win came in Houston, if you'd believe it. In Game 1, Justin Verlander was struggling in the first 3 innings of the game. The Yankees had a Harrison Bader solo home run, but also 5 runners on base against Verlander in the first 3 innings, and they were all stranded there. What happened after that? Verlander unlocked another level in the final 3 innings of his outing, and the Yankees did not get a single runner on base against him after the 3rd inning. He truly shut them down. And Clark Schmidt struggling in Game 1 like we talked about. Really unfortunate. And then in Game 2, the Yankees had a chance to capitalize against Framber Valdez. They scored the 2 unearned runs on Valdez flip-flopping and making 2 errors. They had a few other base runners early in the game against Framber, but he settled in and ended up pitching 7 innings. And Luis Severino threw 1 bad pitch, and that ended up costing the Yankees the game. And then when things got to the Bronx, things were really terrible. Just terrible. Garrett Cole had to be perfect, and he just wasn't. The costly error by Harrison Bader leading to the Chas McCormick 2-run home run, and then the rally in the 6th inning that put 5 runs total on the board for Houston. The Yankee offense was at its most lifeless, being held to 1 hit through the first 8 innings and 3 total in the game. And then yesterday in Game 4, Nestor Cortez injuring his groin in the 3rd inning, Aaron Boone forced to bring out the big weapons in his bullpen in the 3rd inning. And you have to commend him for just throwing it all out there. Clay Holmes, Jonathan Loaizaga, Wandy Peralta pitching about 6 combined innings in that game. They were asked to do an unbelievable amount of work, and it was never going to be perfect. The shame of it is, the Yankees scored 5 runs on 9 hits. It was their best offensive game of the entire postseason, and unfortunately, they took the loss. The Astros bullpen gave up just 1 run after Lance McCullers left the game, and their bullpen is just too good. The Yankees, their offense was lifeless in all of October. It never should have taken 5 games to beat the Cleveland Guardians, and you could tell in the first 2 games with how much the offense was struggling. Once again, not doing much at the plate. We talked about it. 4 runs on 9 hits in the first 2 games with 30 strikeouts. Man, the Yankees got to do some soul searching after this one. The only 2 hitters on this team who really hit throughout the entire postseason were Harrison Bader and Anthony Rizzo. Giancarlo Stanton was decent, not great. And the tragic thing is, Aaron Judge, who's the only reason the Yankees were relevant this year, the only reason the Yankees got to a division title and got to October, he was absolutely horrible in the playoffs. I know that's something nobody wants to say. We can acknowledge that he had the most historic season of any American League batter in history, but we can also acknowledge that he was absolutely horrible in the playoffs. Judge's final numbers in October, a 139 average with 2 homers and a 490 OPS. It was really that bad. I know you're not going to want to hear it. I don't want to say that. I don't say it with any joy, but it's the facts. Judge was one of the reasons the Yankees did not put up a fight against Houston. Him not hitting cost them. Not just him, Gleyber Torres, Josh Donaldson, the catching position, the shortstop position when Isaiah Kiner-Falefa wasn't playing. And the crazy thing about IKF is that he ended up hitting .278 in the playoffs, but his defense was so costly, including on that mistake in Game 4 that allowed the go-ahead runs to score. That play where it was a double play ball that Gleyber Torres and IKF just completely miscommunicated. I'm not going to say it was 100% Gleyber's fault or IKF's fault, just a disastrous play. But it really was cinematic that in IKF's first start at shortstop in a long time in this playoffs, he comes in and a defensive mistake ends up costing the Yankees. All told, the Yankees are out. They got a lot of things to worry about now. Aaron Judge is a free agent. Andrew Benintendi is a free agent. Anthony Rizzo might opt out of his contract with the Yankees. They have as much as $106 to $110 million coming off their payroll entering this offseason. and we'll see how much of that ends up being true. We'll talk a lot more about that in our full Yankees 2022 season recap coming out later this week. But for now, let's talk a little bit about the 2022 World Series before we talk about some NFL news. So the 2022 World Series is finally here, pitting the juggernaut Houston Astros up against the Philadelphia Phillies. Houston in their fourth Fall Classic in just the last 6 years, as they once again look for their second ever World Championship. The Phillies back in the Fall Classic for the first time since 2009, and they're looking for their first championship since 2008. And for both of these teams, they're going to catch a break, with both series ending so quickly in the championship series. The World Series doesn't start until 4 days from now. Today's Monday, October 24th. The Fall Classic doesn't begin until Friday the 28th. Now for Houston, that's nice because they get to completely realign their rotation. Verlander, Valdez, McCullers, and Javier in the first 4 games. But more importantly, for the Phillies, they get to line up Nola and Wheeler in the first 2 games and guarantee that those 2 guys will each get 2 starts in this World Series if the Phillies can stretch it that far. And before we go any further, let's talk about the Phillies for a second here. Who'd have thought that at the end of the season, when we got to October, out of the 3 NL East teams that made the playoffs, the Phillies would be the last one standing? It really is amazing. They got to watch the Mets crash and burn in the wild card round against the Padres, while the Phillies took down the Cardinals, and then the Phillies got to dispatch of the Atlanta Braves themselves. Now they're here, but now they've got the biggest task yet, taking down the Astros. Now what's going Philadelphia's way? Well, they've got the second highest team batting average in the playoffs at .237. They've hit 16 homers. They've scored 57 runs. Both of those numbers lead baseball. They've also hit 23 doubles. They have the most extra base hits. They've done the most offense. They've had to play in 11 games, so they've gotten a lot of chances to do it, but they are doing it. They've had a much better postseason offensively than Houston. And let's put it this way. Houston, their offense could have done way better against the Yankees. The Yankees pitching staff wasn't terrible against Houston. It's just that the Yankees didn't hit. And here's the thing for the Astros. They got to this point on the backs of 3 key hitters. Jeremy Pena, Alex Bregman, and Yuli Gurriel really destroyed the Yankees in the ALCS. Chas McCormick was really good too. He hit 2 homers. But there's 2 guys who need to step up in the World Series who have had really meh, or in one case, awful postseasons. First, it's Yordan Alvarez. Yordan is the best hitter on the Astros. It's not close. He's hitting .241 this postseason. He does have an OPS of .888, but he really had a slow start to the ALCS until he had 2 hits in Game 4. And Jose Altuve, he had 2 bloop singles yesterday. He's still hitting under 100 with a .296 OPS in the Fall Classic. If the Astros are going to win the World Series, they're going to need more than what they've gotten from Altuve. And with that being said, let's dive into the prediction. I'm going to be a lot less optimistic about this one, shall we say. I'm taking the Astros in this one 4-0. I really do believe that it's going to be a sweep. I don't know what you can say. Bryce Harper is the only player on the Phillies who's hitting for a respectable playoff batting average. And like I just talked about with the Astros, they've got a few hitters hitting for high averages and raking. And for the Phillies, besides Harper, their other 2 best hitters have batting averages of 200 or lower. And I just don't know if that's going to really carry them that far. Houston's starting rotation is so much better than Philadelphia's. And yeah, Verlander against Nola and then Valdez against Wheeler are 2 great pitching matchups, but I favor the Astros guy in both games. Then when it comes to whoever the Phillies put up against Lance McCullers Jr. and Christian Javier, I again favor the Astros. And when you talk about bullpens, this is no contest, I'm sorry. Houston's bullpen is utterly disgusting. Brian Abreu, Hector Neris, Ryan Stanek, Ryan Presley, Rafael Montero, Luis Garcia as a long man who we really haven't seen yet in this postseason, and more. They have more weapons than you could possibly fathom. I'm taking the Astros to sweep their way through the entire 2022 playoffs and win the World Series. I don't think the Phillies have a chance. I'm really sorry to say, but that's it. I don't know how else to put it. Houston is so much better than Philly in every single regard. Houston's bats really heated up in the last 2 games of the ALCS against the Yankees, scoring 5 runs in each game. Now we'll have to see if their second long break will affect them. The first one didn't. I don't think the second one will. Astros win their second World Series championship in franchise history. They take down the Phillies 4-0. Now let's talk some NFL, where the Jets and Giants both at it, winning again. The Jets taking down the Broncos 16-9, and the Giants taking down the Jacksonville Jaguars 23-17. The thing is, both teams suffered some injuries in this game that we've got to talk about because they're pretty big ones. For the Giants, they suffered 4 big injuries. 2 offensive linemen, Ben Bredeson and Evan Neal, going down with knee injuries. Daniel Bellinger, their rookie tight end, suffering a bizarre eye injury. And cornerback Adoree Jackson, who has been the best player in that secondary, having to leave the game to get evaluated for a concussion. That's a host of injuries the Giants really can't afford to have. Now, Evan Neal is already confirmed to be out 2 to 4 weeks, but there's no timeline yet for Bredeson, Bellinger, or Jackson. And obviously, you're hoping Ben Bredeson's knee injury was also not severe, so that if he does have to miss some time, he can still come back later. For Daniel Bellinger, the play, as I said, was bizarre. The way it went down during a play, Jaguars linebacker Devin Lloyd ended up getting his hand through Bellinger's face mask and striking him in the eye. Again, bizarre. You don't really see that happen too often. But he left the game, and Coach Brian Daboll said afterwards that his eye looked horrible. Now, of course, first things first, I'm hoping that Bellinger gets full recovery in that eye and his vision isn't impacted at all. But he really would be missed on the field if he's unable to play. He's got 3 touchdowns already. He's proven how good he can be as a pass catcher and a run blocker. And with Adoree Jackson and the possible concussion, obviously that's going to be taken seriously, but especially seriously considering how many players in the last few weeks of the NFL season have been getting evaluated for concussions, whether they be quarterbacks or non-quarterbacks. Now here's some positives for the Giants in this game. Daniel Jones had over 300 total yards, over 100 on the ground, and over 200 passing. He had a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown with no interceptions and no fumbles. Saquon Barkley had over 100 yards on the ground. Darius Slayton had 58 receiving yards with a touchdown. And Wan'Dale Robinson had 6 catches. All big positives on the offense. But there's one more downside to talk about. It's on defense. The Giants couldn't really get anything going against Trevor Lawrence and the Jags and that offensive line. Kayvon Thibodeau had just 2 pressures, and the team did not have a sack. The closest they came was on the final drive of the game where Dexter Lawrence was flagged for roughing the passer on Trevor Lawrence. Now, I'm not going to give you the rant on roughing the passer. We all know how ridiculous the situation is with that call. We all know at this point it's a crapshoot. So I'm going to spare you that. But that was the only time the Giants came close to sacking Lawrence. Not to mention, they took multiple penalties on the final drive of the game, and it nearly cost them the game. Fortunately, the entire secondary tackled Christian Kirk at the 1-yard line to stop him from scoring a game-tying touchdown and setting up Jacksonville to walk it off with the extra point. All told, the Giants did pick up the win, yes, but this was without question their sloppiest win of the season. And you're just hoping with those 4 injured players I mentioned that at least the 3 that we know about that aren't out yet for an extended period of time, Bredeson, Bellinger, and Jackson, that they can come back next week or the week after, that their time away from the team is very, very short. For the Jets, it was a 16-9 takedown of the Denver Broncos, as I said. Denver was, of course, without Russell Wilson, and they were limited to just 3 field goals in this game. For the Jets, they only scored 1 touchdown. It was scored by Breece Hall on a big 60-plus yard touchdown run, but unfortunately, Hall left the game, and we later learned that he had torn his ACL. A devastating blow to this young, talented Jets team. And for a guy like Breece Hall, who was averaging about 100 scrimmage yards per game and had 5 touchdowns in his rookie campaign, he's out for the rest of the season. And as we've seen with other big running backs suffering ACLs, namely the guy who shares MetLife Stadium with him as the starting running back, Saquon Barkley, this recovery can take a long time. It ended up taking Saquon Barkley an entire season being back before he started to look like the old Saquon. Not to mention he wasn't playing well in the couple of games before he tore his ACL. That obviously isn't the case with Hall, but he is the most exciting piece of that Jets offense, and now he's gone, and that's brutal. The rest of the ground game as a unit did a good job, averaging over 4 yards a carry, but Michael Carter, who was the face of the ground game last year, has to step back up again, and he didn't have an efficient game. Just 2.2 yards per carry, 13 carries for 29 yards, and nobody else on the ground for the Jets had a touchdown. Not to mention that in the passing game, Zach Wilson also put up really, I gotta call them bad numbers. I mean, he didn't fumble the ball, he didn't have any interceptions, but on 16 completions, he had just 121 passing yards. There's only so much the Jets can do when they don't get enough separation, they face good secondaries, and their quarterback just doesn't throw the ball deep down the field, and they're a run-first offense. You put all those things together, and It's not a surprise to see Zach Wilson having such a low amount of passing yards, but now that Breece Hall is out, they really can't afford for that to continue. They really can't. Not to mention some other injuries the Jets suffered in this game. Elijah Vera-Tucker, their stud offensive lineman, left the game with an elbow injury, and wide receiver Corey Davis injured his knee and did not return to the game. Now, I talked about this when we last talked about the Jets, that Davis has always come up with one or two hugely important catches. Big yardage, big plays. Now he's out, and you just have to hope, like the Giants are, with their injured O-lineman who suffered knee injuries, that Corey Davis can come back soon too. All told for the Jets, a 16-9 win is a win, but they got the New England Patriots coming to town next week, and the Patriots ground game, it's on fire right now with Ramondre Stevenson, and they're getting Damian Harris back, so we're going to see another 1-2 punch of running backs go up against the Jets. We'll see if their defense can hold strong like they did in this game against Denver. Lastly, let's talk about the Knicks and Nets both taking the court today. The Knicks playing host to Paolo Banchero and the Orlando Magic, while the Nets are in Memphis taking on Ja Morant and the Grizzlies. Now, I expect the Knicks to take care of business against the Magic. They've really been trying a lot of different things out over their first two games, and their big win over the Pistons, 130-106, not a single player on the team reached 30 minutes played. And I was saying that it wasn't clear yet how Tom Thibodeau was going to make use of some of the new pieces that he has, like Isaiah Hartenstein, and also using Emmanuel Quickley and Obi Toppin. How much or how little would that happen? Well, everyone contributed in that game in a big win. We'll see if the playing time gets split that evenly from here on, but it's safe to say that the first two games for the Knicks, their playing strategy definitely looked different. Same goes for the Nets. The big thing I said about the Nets and their season opening loss was the fact that they really didn't seem to share the ball. No player had more than 5 assists in that game, and that changed greatly here in the second game, where 3 players got more than 5. Kevin Durant had 6, Kyrie Irving had 7 in a 30-point effort for him against the Raptors, and Ben Simmons had 8 assists along with 10 rebounds and 6 points, nearly a double-double for him in just his second game as a Net. Now, I expect this to be a tough game for Brooklyn against Ja Morant and the Grizzlies. The good news is, defensively, early, it's been a disastrous season for the Grizzlies. They've allowed over 120 points in back-to-back games, 122 to the Houston Rockets, and then 137 to Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. Defensively, in terms of defensive rating, points allowed in the paint, and a lot of other bad categories, including defensive rebounding percentage, the Memphis Grizzlies are at or near the bottom in the NBA out of the gate. So, yeah, they're 2-1, but it hasn't been the prettiest, and if the Nets can keep their offense going, keep up that ball sharing, and step up a little bit on defense, shut down Ja Morant a little bit, then they've got a shot to pick up their second win of the season. That's going to be it for episode number 6 of 20 Minutes with Multz. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Leave any comments down below. Like I said, 2 more episodes coming your way this week. One will be a full recap and offseason preview for the Yankees, and the other will be one for the New York Mets. We'll also talk a little bit about these Knicks and Net games coming up, talk a little hockey, and if there's any news that comes up with the Giants or the Jets, you'll hear it here first as well. And after all that, I'm Daniel Multz. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.